Cliff Richard, born Harry Roger Webb on October 14, 1940 in Lucknow, India, grew up far from the spotlight that would eventually embrace him. Yet looking back at age 85, he openly reflects on the truth about his connection with George Harrison in a way he never had before. After moving with his family to England in 1948 following Indian independence, young Cliff faced the humbling realities of post-war life. Settling in Cheshunt, Hertfordshire, where American rock and roll became his escape and inspiration, especially the voices of Elvis Presley and Little Richard. That passion helped push him toward music. And by the late 1950s, he had become Britain's first homegrown rock and roll star, long before the Beatles even existed. In 1958, his explosive single Move It arrived like a lightning bolt, a song many still call the first true British rock and roll record. And Cliff, backed by the Drifters, soon renamed the Shadows, quickly became a sensation. Hits like Living Doll, Please Don't Tease, and the young ones made him the nation's teenage idol, while the Shadows carved out their own influential musical identity. When the Beatles ushered in a new era, Cliff didn't disappear as many predicted. Instead, he adapted with remarkable ease, easing from rock and roll into soft pop ballads, and eventually gospel-based music. His 1968 Eurovision entry, Congratulations, showcased a more polished sound, while the 1970 seconds and 1980 seconds brought renewed success through Devil Woman, Dreaming, and We Don't Talk Anymore. His deep Christian faith, embraced in the mid-1960 seconds, quietly guided him through fame, anchoring his image in sincerity rather than scandal. With more than 250 million records sold across a career stretching over 6 decades, Cliff earned a knighthood in 1995 and remains the only artist with UK top 5 hits in every decade, from the 1950 seconds through the 200 seconds. Even in later years, he kept recording, releasing the Fabulous Rock and Roll Songbook in 2013, Just Fabulous Rock and Roll in 2016, Rise Up in 2018, and Christmas with Cliff in 2022, all proving that his voice and spirit endure. But now, with age has come honesty. And Cliff finally shared the truth about his friendship with George Harrison, something he had long kept private. Their first meeting in the early 196 seconds was modest, just backstage in Liverpool. But Cliff immediately noticed George's gentle shyness, a trait that only deepened Cliff's respect for him. Although Cliff had already achieved massive fame while the Beatles were still climbing, the two musicians connected through a quiet mutual admiration. Cliff respected George's musical depth, while George admired Cliff for paving the way for British rock and roll. Over time, they discovered an even stronger bond, spirituality. Cliff spoke from a Christian perspective, while George explored Hindu philosophy, meditation, and Eastern teachings, yet the two found common ground. Cliff recalled George once telling him, "All paths lead to the same place if your heart is right," a sentence that stayed with him for decades. Their conversations were never debates. Instead, they were meaningful exchanges between two men searching for peace in worlds that constantly demanded pieces of them. As the Beatles skyrocketed to global fame, George became a cultural icon. Yet, Cliff always admired how George stayed grounded, even when the weight of the world was on him. Cliff remembered evenings where George would sit in a corner with his sitar, playing music not for applause, but as a kind of spiritual expression. Those moments, Cliff admitted, changed how he viewed his own work, inspiring him to seek deeper meaning in his songs instead of chasing chart placements. Even though their paths separated as fame reshaped their lives, they continued crossing at charity events and private gatherings. But after George's passing in 2001, Cliff felt an unexpected emptiness. He said he mourned not only the legendary musician, but the kind, introspective man who had once shared quiet wisdom with him. Cliff also confessed that he sometimes envied George's ability to step away from the spotlight, retreat into his garden, and live simply without chasing applause. Cliff admitted he never quite managed that himself performing was in his bones. Now, in his mid-80 seconds, Cliff looks back at George with gratitude rather than grief. Grateful he knew the real George, not the global icon, but the thoughtful, soft-spoken soul who valued truth over fame. In telling the full story only now, Cliff offered a moving reminder that even behind two towering careers were simply two men trying to live life, faith, and purpose. Their friendship, built not on publicity, but on quiet understanding, remains one of the most meaningful connections Cliff ever experienced. And sharing it at last feels like both a tribute and a